Agent Romanoff. You miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Jackman, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
Hey guys, and welcome to FilmArtsy, your #1 source for all things films and movies. My name is Elijah, and we have some really exciting and interesting news about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe when it comes to actors and actresses who have maybe stepped away from the MCU for quite some time, who are set to reappear finally after a few years and kind of being on the back burner of a lot of people's minds when it came to plot lines that were going in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now we know we're seeing the likes of Natalie Portman returning for the new Thor movie, along with Kat Dennings, who played Darcy in the first 2 Thor movies, who will be returning for WandaVision. It's always interesting when we see these actresses or actors that we kind of wrote off finally making a return to the MCU in one way or another. So today we thought it would be fun to take a look at 10 forgotten MCU actors that may make a return in the near future in the MCU. Let's go ahead and jump into it. But before we can fully start this video, we have to give a huge shout out, of course, to Adita for getting our Marvel Monday question of the day correctly. If you guys didn't know, every single Monday we ask a challenging Marvel related trivia question, and if you answer it correctly, you have a chance of having your comment featured on our channel. So if you guys want to participate, check our community tab over on our YouTube channel every single Monday for Marvel Mondays, and we even do a DC version on Thursdays. Make sure you guys are subscribed so you have a chance to have your comment featured here on this channel. Let's go ahead and jump back into this video. So first up on our list is definitely a character that's been alluded to for a long time now. We just haven't seen the full return, and this is a really interesting one. But Stellan Skarsgård, who plays Professor Selvig, he's kind of this really big character who was a character who's played multiple roles in not only the Thor movies, but he was involved in the Avengers movie. He was in a couple of short scenes in Avengers Age of Ultron, and then he kind of just fell off. We haven't really heard anything about this character in quite some time. And with the other 2 characters that originated from the first 2 Thor movies making a return, it would make sense for this character also to return in one way or another. Now we have seen a lot of little sneak peeks or cameo appearances of images of this character, as we see him appear as one of the faces of people who were snapped by Thanos in Avengers Endgame, which kind of shows that he's still there in the background. He's still in the minds of the creative team behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he even has another little Easter egg cameo appearance in Far From Home when Peter is scrolling through the available movies he can watch. You can actually see as one of the available documentaries, it's hosted by him. So he's definitely existing out there in the MCU in one way or another, but we haven't actually gotten to see the full-on return of this character just yet. But we are very optimistic, and this one is obvious why it's on the top of our list. This character is not only one of the integral characters from the earlier days of the MCU, but there's just really interesting things that the fact that this character even exists need to be kind of talked about. Now, last we heard of this character, he was hired to work at Avengers headquarters alongside Dr. Helen Cho, who is another character that probably should make a return in some way or another, as she was very important in the creation of Ultron and all these other little things that went into it, and definitely something we would like to maybe know a little bit more about. We'd really like to see what happens with these 2 characters in the future. They're definitely characters that are often overlooked. Next on our list is a character that hasn't been gone for too long, however is a fan favorite, and we're hopeful will make a return in one way or another. But Idris Elba, of course, played Heimdall in Thor, and he had roles through all of the Thor movies, along with a role in Avengers Infinity War. And while he does not make it all the way through Avengers Infinity War, we are optimistic since we're going to be seeing a Disney Plus series revolving around Loki, the one from the 2012 timeline. It is very possible Heimdall is still in existence, and maybe we'll actually see the return of this character in that timeline, as technically a lot of events haven't occurred just yet. So we are very hopeful that we're going to get to see this, and who knows, maybe we can see this awesome character brought back in some cool way or another. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see and find out what they end up choosing to do with this character. But there are definitely a lot of people who loved Heimdall as a character. He was definitely one of the more interesting characters, especially between all of the different roles and storylines that have wrapped around him. So we're hopeful to see him make a return someday. This one's probably a little more of a stretch, but it's one that would be so awesome if it would be actually included, just because it seems like often the Incredible Hulk and Bruce Banner's storyline gets kind of swept under the rug. He doesn't get too much acknowledgement, especially because they recasted his character. They kind of focus more on his character now versus the origin type of the character or the earlier days of the character, especially since there was a different actor playing it. But one of the things that has held true, and the one main reference that it seems like the MCU likes to acknowledge in the larger scheme of things, is General Thaddeus Ross. Now, of course, this character is very big. He kind of made this big return in Civil War that no one was expecting. He's had a couple other roles in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and he's going to appear in Black Widow in some form or another. However, the interesting thing about Bruce Banner's storyline is that in the original Incredible Hulk, his love interest is Betty Ross, who's the General's daughter. And the one thing that hasn't really been talked about is the fact that Betty Ross technically is a character in the MCU, played by Liv Tyler in the first film, but we don't know anything that happened to her. And if they're going to continue to have General Ross in this story for some reason or another, one really interesting depth to this character is the relationship he has with his daughter and the conflict between Hulk and all of that. So we'd really like to see possibly a return one day, just because it could be a really unique story to tell. Now, of course, it would probably take some really interesting convincing, or maybe they would just do a recast there as well if they really wanted to. But we do know for certain, just because of people at the creative team who talked about kind of forgotten characters and their fate after Avengers Infinity War, that Betty Ross was one of the people who was snapped away, though she did get, of course, re-snapped back into the universe when we see the events of Avengers Endgame. So will this character ever reappear in any major plot lines? We don't know, but it is really interesting nonetheless that there is this character out there. This one is another really recent one, but it's one that has just a huge question mark moving forward for the MCU. There's no standalone movies announcing this character being in it, and this character was kind of just a character interjected into Ant-Man and the Wasp, as they didn't really have any other characters in the MCU to call upon for that film. They also needed some sort of antagonistic character for that movie as well. So we see the character Ghost introduced in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and after the end of the movie, there's some guilt, there's some depth to this character that's really interesting, but then we never really saw any sign of this character ever making some sort of return. There's no sign of it in Endgame. We haven't seen any types of trailer reveals showing a return of Ghost, no announcements announcing that Ghost will be co-starring as a side character in a movie or a Disney Plus series. So we really don't know what's going to happen. We have a feeling that Ghost could turn into maybe some sort of anti-hero or a good character rather than a villain. So we are optimistic to see what could end up happening in the future, though we really just have this big question mark, as we don't really know if they're ever going to bring this character back or not. We're optimistic, but we don't have any full insight here. Then we could look to Aaron Taylor Johnson, the actor who played Quicksilver, who falls into another interesting category as being one of these characters who was, of course, written off in his movie. But the interesting thing is, since we're going to be seeing this series on Disney Plus with Loki, we might see the return of this character as well in some sort of cameo appearance, or even better yet, maybe in WandaVision. We know there's going to be some weird, quirky stuff going on in that show as well, and maybe we'll see some sort of cameo appearance from this actor, kind of reprising his role, since Wanda is obviously in a really weird place. This could even lead into some bigger storylines with Doctor Strange's movie coming out, and we really just have this big ambiguous question mark onto what is going to happen. But we would really like to see this character make a return in some small form or another. We don't need a full resurrection, but it'd be really cool if they acknowledge his existence once again. Another big character that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about, but the people who remember him do want to see more of his character kind of fleshed out and more story. But Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2 kind of just got pushed aside in the story. He goes to prison at the end, and that's kind of all we ever see from him. We don't really know much about him, but he was kind of this big villain character and a pretty big antagonist, and it's interesting that he's just kind of pushed aside, but it'd make for a really interesting storyline. Maybe he can provide some technology for some sort of face-off that Spider-Man has to face off in an upcoming movie. That would be really cool, and a lot of people have speculated that for a while, so maybe that will be the use of this character, but it'd be really awesome to see a return there as well. And while while we're talking about Spider-Man characters, while this isn't pertaining necessarily to just the MCU, we also wanted to acknowledge all the talks that have been speculated upon and talked about a live-action Spider-Verse movie where maybe we would see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield reprise their roles as respective Spider-Men. That would be really awesome to see as well, but that one's probably a bigger stretch. But who knows? Sony's made crazier things happen, and maybe we can actually see this come to life in one way or another. Then we have a couple characters who have smaller roles that aren't as integral, but it's interesting to note nonetheless. We have Ty Simpkins, who is the kid from Iron Man 3, who was completely forgotten about until he had that small appearance in Avengers Endgame. Maybe we're going to see more of this character as well in the future. And then we can actually look to Abby Ryder Forreston, the actor who plays Cassie Lang, also known as Ant-Man's daughter, who was recasted in Avengers Endgame with the 5-year time jump. But since we don't have a specific lined up date necessarily for Ant-Man 3 or Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, whatever they decide to call it, it is possible that by the time shooting starts for that film, we might see this actress be old enough to take on the role of the character as a teenager. And at that point, we're going to have to see what Marvel decides to do, whether or not they want to keep the child actor or go with the actress that they casted in Avengers Endgame. We really like to know what you guys think about that casting decision. Do you think they should stick to the actress who's played it for the 2 main movies, or should they just keep up to date with the recasting after the time jump? But those are a lot of the main ones that we have kind of speculated and talked about for quite some time now. Let us know who you would like to see make a return in the MCU in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos just like this one. We'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video. Bye guys.
I'm about to.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Hi.
See you guys.
Know anybody?